It always gets weird. So yes, when the Cracker Barrel, they end up doing, if you're doing $4 million a year, $3 million is going through the restaurant, and they make no money or next to no money. Most restaurants is like 3 to 5% margins, which isn't a lot of money. The gift shop was actually where the revenue center is, and that's why when you go into like Macy's, JCPenney, you walk through watches and jewelry and makeup first before you get to the clothing, and it's the newest clothing at the best price, and you work your way back to the discount aisle is in the way in the back, and that is on purpose. The same thing happens inside of food and beverage. Alcohol is where you make your margins, so if you can sell a couple of drinks or a bottle of wine, you're going to make up the differences, especially if people, you can't charge a whole lot of money on barbecue and steaks. The meat has a high cost right off the top.
I don't know. There's plenty of places now, and well, that actually brings up an interesting conversation about barbecue, where I've seen, because I'm a part of a lot of barbecue groups, and you hear people talking about like, oh, I can't imagine paying $30 for a brisket, because you can go down to a store and you can buy a brisket for $4 a pound or whatever. I'm like, look, man, so science behind it first, and I will get a little geek on this one, but you have a brisket, let's say it's a 12-pound brisket. Once you trim that brisket down, get all the fat and everything off of it, you're down to 9.5, 10 pounds maybe. Then once you cook once you cook the moisture and the fat renders out and everything, you're now down to about 8 pounds, 7.5 pounds. It's not uncommon to take a raw brisket and only get about 60 to 65% yield once it's cooked.
Yeah, did you mention the trimming as well? Because there's a lot of trimming on that goes to waste. The same thing, they say that 10% of fish actually gets eaten. The rest is just waste and trimmings.
You know, I was a fishmonger, and I could get a 30% yield off of a flounder, filleting a flounder. That was my claim to fame.
Nice.
That's pretty high for a flounder.
Yeah.
You know? But, you know, I was slow. It took me time. I was an artist, you know. But give me enough time and I can get a nice good yield. Both sides of the flounder. The little side, the little fillet too.
So are we into our next segment?
The overlays of us is even more strange, because one of the jobs I had as a kid was working in a catfish market in the town I grew up in, and that's what we did. We filleted out and we packaged. They would bring in, a fisherman would bring in whole fresh catfish from the lakes that were nearby, and we would have them in giant tanks where they were swimming around. People would say they wanted 20 pounds of live catfish, which I'm like, okay, cool. That's gonna get you 6.5, 7 pounds of meat. They're like, done. We'd scoop out and we'd live weigh 20 pounds of catfish and fillet them out, and you could watch from the fish swimming all the way to the bag being packed on ice as we were doing it.
Yeah. And that's another thing where I go to the Asian markets for my lobster, because I usually get a better price on lobster going to those markets, and they're taking care of the product.
That is so good. Are we still on the first one that we
This is
started
still
with?
the first one. You know, I did this to cleanse our palate.
Okay.
After our break, to get ready for the second one, and make sure that we can taste this next tea, because I'm going to do a much more delicate tea. And you had another prompt.
I do. I have another question for you. So you started off, you were obviously young, doing all the teas with your families and everything else, ordering it, and that was very much a part of your life and you enjoyed it. But at what point, in what tea or what event did you suddenly realize, like, oh, I don't want to just enjoy this, I want to really understand this, and I want, instead of this being a thing that I do, I want this to be a part of my life?
Yeah.
Turn this into a business.
Well, before that,
or just nerd out on it and like really want to learn about it.
Right. Yeah. Make this is my thing. This is the thing that I'm going to be a tea person, and this is like my deal now, is like being into tea. So that happened for me when I was in college. So I grew up drinking Chinese teas, but it was always just this like thing that I did with my family. And it was in college. I went to Santa Cruz, UC Santa Cruz, go Slugs, Santa Cruz, California. That was my, the banana slugs, you know, that's us. And I one day I was going to a specialty glass shop to get something completely unrelated done. And then I saw across the street there was a shop called Chai Khana. Interesting, I had a conversation about this place yesterday with someone from Central Asia, because that's the word for a Central Asian tea house. But it was this little tea shop, like 2 buses away from where I lived, over on the other side of town. and it just said Chai Kana tea culture, and I was like, oh, that was cool. I'm waiting for the glass guy. I went inside, and it was like, you ever see Gremlins?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
It's like the shop where he steals Gizmo from. It's like all this crazy stuff everywhere. You don't know what anything does. It was like that. It was just this long little shotgun building, and there was one dude in there. His name was David Wright. He was sitting there, middle-aged white guy, sitting there pouring tea out of a little teapot like this, a little Chinese teapot, and he was pouring this tea. Silver Needle. I'm not going to use the teapot right now, but I could actually. I'll use the teapot. I was going to use that glass.
Just add all the experience to it.
Yeah,
I like it.
Recreate this as much as possible. So this is what he was serving. This is Silver Needle. This is kind of the archetypal white tea. When you hear about white tea and you hear that it's just buds, well, not all white tea is just buds, but this one is, and this is the most famous one. And you can see how different it looks in the last tea. You have these distinct little downy buds, and it looks kind of this light mint white.
Oh, that's
mint
crazy.
green white, because there's all these little hairs on those buds, and that was what makes it white tea. Is that it's raw, it's not cooked, it hasn't gone through the kill green process that green tea and other teas go through. And so he was serving this out of a little teapot at the back of this shop, and it wasn't so much the tea. I'm not going to take the credit away from the tea because that's the tea that it was, but what it was all of this stuff. I was like, this is so cool. You look like a freaking wizard back here with all of your little doohickeys and doing, like this little move, pouring the water over the teapot. Mm-hmm. It's just a simple little thing that we do is to create a seal, heat the teapot from the outside and the inside, but the effect of it's like you're spilling water everywhere. Look at you. And it just looks cool, it feels cool. And the ritual and kind of the craft of the step of making the tea itself. And I think that's something that's unique about tea that you see less in the world of liquor and alcohol is that the beverage comes to you in a bottle ready to go. The person who's crafting that has crafted it and it's there, and you could open the bottle, or Richard could open the bottle, or Corey could open the bottle, and we can pour it out and drink it, and it's essentially going to be the same thing. But if I pour the tea and someone else pours the tea, they're going to come out really different.
Right.
And so having this ritual where the craft is not just in what the person producing the product does, it's in what the person serving the product does, because the end product is the liquid, not the leaf. And so having that step and being like, this is something that it's not a thing that you drink, it's a thing that you do. Tea becoming a thing that you do rather than just a beverage. That was the moment that did it for me. And that was when I first started studying this Gong Fu Cha, the art of tea service, and developing that skill for myself, and got my own tea set, started serving tea to my friends and my girlfriend, my housemate, and my classmates and all that. So I'm going to give you a little rinse.
Okay.
You can give this to that
pour right on the dragon.
little dragon there, yeah.
That's interesting because it's the same thing. People have said the same thing to me about bartending. I've come in here and you just whip things together. It's like magic or it's like alchemy. I came in here and I ended up getting an experience and handling a number of people in a crowd and bringing them in and then sending them off with something that was created in that moment can be a magical experience for people. And sometimes
the hand from beyond.
sometimes we'll discount this ephemeral type of thing. It's like, well, this is just something that I do.
Huh. Okay. And I kind of see I see both sides of the conversation where with like barbecue, doing a brisket or something like that, you're just kind of on your own, tending the fire, doing everything else, and you'll have and I have a story about Miss Tootsie that I'd like to tell
go
people.
right ahead.
So with barbecue, much like with tea, whenever you start, you don't really understand what it is. You like to eat it, but you don't understand kind of what goes into it. And then somebody's like, oh, well, I can smoke a brisket. And they go very scientific about it. They focus a lot on, I want this specific brisket from this specific place. I want the right side brisket, not the left side brisket. There are people that get to that level, trust me.
Yes.
So you also they want their seasonings from a specific place, and they make sure they maintain their temperature at a very specific time, and they only cook at certain times of year because they want the humidity the same. And they really get into it. And then once they've done that for a long time, it's just like you had a couple episodes ago where you were talking about how you used to have very specific temperatures, and now you just do everything at boiling, and you just hold your hand over it to feel the temperature.
Yeah.
I've hung out with Miss Tootsie a couple times, and Snow's Barbecue up north, really good. You haven't been there, go there. But what I happened to be there one day, and somebody asked her, who's a guy that was learning barbecue, and he thought he was really good with it. And he asked her, it's like, Miss Tootsie, what secret are you willing to tell me? And she looked at him and was like, honey, I will tell you everything about how I make barbecue. And then I'll go sit in that chair and I'm going to tell you to good luck. Because you can learn what to do, but you have to practice and experience how to do it.
That's right.
And that's, I think with whiskey, and like you're talking about how it comes in a bottle, like, yes, but I think where I've really enjoyed drinking is I had people who made the whiskey an experience, who made it to where, not getting into the nerd aspects and everything of it, but having a story behind it, or being able to kind of set it up and do a progression of different whiskeys. That is a lot of fun, where somebody can do that kind of thing and make it an experience where you get to go. And that's why I'm asking these kind of questions. I want to see your journey and see what it was like.
Yeah. And I'm going to let you see if you can see the light through this. You can see these tiny little hairs floating.
That's
little,
that's good.
Yeah, this is a much fancier tea than the one that we just had.
Let's see if we can get it.
Yeah,
Ooh, I don't think I can.
You have to get it backlit.
Oh, backlit?
It's got to be backlit, yeah.
Dude, don't tell me what I got to do. Don't tell me. Hold it right there, baby. Oh, I think I can see some stuff in there.
Yeah.
Oh, you can? Yeah, you can.
Look at there.
Yeah.
What's in my tea?
Don't tell me what. Don't tell me. So hard.
He says he's professional, been doing it a long time.
Mm-hmm.
Professional. All right.
Oh, this is good.
Yeah. Yeah.
Something.
And I'm going to invite you to do what you just told me. Don't worry about what it tastes like. Don't worry about what it smells like. It's good. Great. It's good. It's good because you like it and you drink it and it feels good.
It reminds me of a hayfield. It reminds me, because I grew up working on ranches doing things like that, and it definitely has that green grass kind of feel. And whenever it was dry and I was smelling it, it had that the hay has been cut and we've already done one turn on, we're getting ready to bale it. It has a very specific smell as it's starting to dry out on the ground.
Yeah.
That is exactly right. Yeah. Now that you pointed your finger at
that
it.
is what that smells like. And as soon as I did that, and again, like the conversations you and I've been having all night, like I remember stuff from my childhood and things that I remember growing up, and that was like, this is about to become an expensive habit.
Yeah. This is an expensive one.
No.
Yeah, this is one of the more expensive ones.
It's like, for me, the hay is Halloween. And putting together Halloween decorations and putting up the hay
His
bales.
Halloween decorations that he does to his house?
I have not.
Oh, it is obscene. And it's glorious at the same time. It's amazing.
Is Halloween big in Canada? They do it like we do here?
We started, my wife and I, at her mother's house many years ago, and it was like buying little rubber rats and putting them on the steps and having the children have an adventure coming up the driveway to the door and having something to experience along the way. And I think that sort of translates into what we're doing here, is creating an experience that people get to travel along with you, and they get to have little adventures along the way.
Yeah.
It's getting harder to do as we get older, but we're going to keep on trying to do it every single year as much as we can until we can no longer do the Christmas and Halloween. There have been a couple of things that have sort of fallen off. I ended up breaking a window with a ladder this year, so it's getting harder to get through the trees. Yeah.
Ooh. Something I always say about tea is that the medicine of tea is that it connects us. It connects us to ourselves. It connects us to nature. And it connects us to each other. And you just did all three of those right there. Your connection to yourself is that childhood memory. It's connecting you to something inside of you that's evocative, that's part of who you are, that memory. It connects us to nature because it's the memory of nature. It's that smell of the grass, the feeling of the end of the day, making hay, letting it dry. And it's connecting us to each other because we're here having this shared experience and we're bonding over, y'all have this shared experience of what does hay mean to you? What does this tea mean to you? Well, it's like hay. And so it brings back all of these childhood memories and all these things that are like hay.
And even drinking the tea itself, it has the kind of flavor that if it has rained on that same kind of stuff, or there's like morning dew going out, it tastes like the air does. It has that. I don't want to say musty because it's not musty, but it's like an earthy taste that whenever you're walking out, it's the beginning of the day, everything's kind of moist, and you're just like, all right, it's time to get to work, and that's what it reminds me of.
Yeah.
Like my brain keeps telling me, it's like, okay, it's time to go to work. It's time to do stuff.
Yeah.
So tying this in, hay and straw and grass actually ends up having seeds that grow up at the very end of the grasses. So very tall grasses are actually being cultivated to make whiskey. Barley can be 2-row, 6-row. There's a number of different types of barley out there, but essentially those barleys are the seeds or the grains that are coming from a grass.
Right.
The same thing with the sugar cane is essentially a grass, but it's the juice of that grass that creates that sugary. In the terms of the grain, that seed has a packet of starch that's there so that when it grows, that starch is the energy source. It's like the yolk and the white of an egg. That yolk is that energy source that the chicken is going to use to feed upon as it's developing inside the egg. The same thing with the seed. That starch is sitting inside of there waiting for the grain to start sprouting and converting into sugar. And we've got a barley-made whiskey, Irish whiskey, to try right now. I think you brought something that in Ireland.
Yes.
Look at that segue, though. Richard with that
He is with
segue
that segue.
from grass into cultivating grass and barley and whiskey. You thought it was smooth. It was smooth, but I saw you doing it. I was like, oh,
The
damn.
segue's not
He's
done
doing
yet.
it. He's doing
the
it. All right,
segue's
here we
not
go.
done yet because you're going to love this. All right, so Teeling single malt. This was a whiskey that I was drinking at one of probably the most, because I just retired from the military, and this is what I was drinking at probably the most challenging experience that I had in the military as far as what I was doing and planning and helping and everything else. So at our shop where we can buy alcohol on post, they had a sale on this. Richard's about to laugh. I found this by accident for $16 a bottle.
Wow. I've seen that happen. The things get discounted. Nobody's paying
Really?
attention to it.
It is nowhere near $16 a bottle now.
But what is it, though? Now?
Now,
Like, what would it really?
70, 60, 75 if you can find it. So
That's
the
bad.
Teeling line, you can find the single grains, you can find the small batch, you can find a lot of the others, but the single malt is really difficult to kind of track down. So it is, you're growing up in Houston. So the time was October 2017.
Okay.
Hurricane Harvey is in full tear,
Yep,
and
I was there.
Houston has been smacked. And I was in the Texas Army National Guard. I was a medical operations NCO, so I was planning a lot of the medical response going on down in Houston, where our military assets were tying into HEB and tying into some of the hospitals, getting the power restored, and doing all that kind of stuff. And I was working 37 hours a day, about 10 days a week, trying to do a bunch of that stuff. And there was a friend of mine that was staying with me, and we had gotten Teeling, and it was, as we would get home from work, it would be 9, 10 o'clock at night, and we would have a bottle of Teeling. We would just sit on my back porch, talk about what all happened that day, what all we need to do next day, and we would drink this. And I really liked how it tasted. I really liked how it was different than anything I had before, and I wanted to learn. So ironically enough, whenever somebody wants to be a nerd and they want to start learning about a particular thing, where does one turn?
The internet.
YouTube. Guess what review the Whiskey Vault did right as Hurricane Harvey was rolling in and the sky was getting dark outside the tasting room?
Oh my goodness.
It was Teeling Single Malt.
Yeah.
So it was a very fresh episode because I wanted to research it, and that's whenever I saw Daniel and Rex doing tastings and everything else. I'm like, oh, looking at them with how they explain things, I'm like, okay, I now kind of understand how you can do this. So I started wanting to learn, and that is how I really dove headlong into whiskey, doing the Whiskey Tribe stuff, doing the Whiskey Vault stuff, getting to know the guys, and later on how you and I met. And this is the bottle that triggered all of that. And once again, our paths crossing with me helping with all the stuff down in Houston, Hurricane Harvey.
I was in Pearland at my dad's house, boarding up the windows. Yeah, I remember the shingles were flying off.
I was actually in Laredo, Texas. My wife was on assignment in Laredo, Texas as an RN. And yeah, so this brings us all together.
Wow.
Ready for
So Harvey.
Yeah. What a cool segue back into the hay. A friend of mine who was working for me was a flight medic. And I have video somewhere of him throwing hay bales out of the back of a Chinook to cows that were trapped and they couldn't get hay to.
Wow.
That's really nice.
It is.
It's
And
really nice.
again, it pairs well.
Yeah, man, I love that. I love Irish whiskey.
Yeah.
I love Irish whiskey. And, you know, I think this is one of my fun fact. I'm Jewish on my mom's side, which is the side that counts for being a Jew, right? So on my dad's side, I'm Chinese, and on my mom's side, I'm a Jew. And so my rabbi is in China. I didn't get bar mitzvah until I was living in China, and as an adult, you know, I was like 27 years old. And he and I bonded over drinking Jameson. That was what we would do together. Because like I was not into religion, but this guy would drink Jameson with me, and he liked to party. Like he was down to party and get down to like get deep and have great conversations. So we just developed this great bond. Actually, right now is Purim. And this is basically Chinese, or not Chinese, Jewish Halloween. Hebreween, I call it. You know, and this is the first Jewish holiday I ever really participated in. And it was in Chengdu. My cousin, who is much more Jewish than I am, visiting me in Chengdu, was like, Sohan, let's go to the Chabad house. Let's go do some Jewish stuff. And I was like, I'm not really into religion. And she kept bugging me about it. And finally, I was like, all right, Natana, what's the sluttiest Jewish holiday? And she's like, Purim. Because it's basically like Jewish Halloween. You're supposed to get so drunk that you can't tell the good guy in the story from the bad guy. And it's right now, today. It's 2 days long, and it was yesterday. So my story with Dovi, my rabbi, is that she dragged me to the Chabad house. I was dressed as Mario, right? I met the rabbi.
Did you have the mustache?
I had half a mustache. Yeah, I shaved off half. It was I don't remember why, but I had half a mustache, and I got talking to the rabbi, and he just thought my whole story and journey with like Judaism and everything was freaking hilarious. And so Purim's 2 days. Everyone goes the first day. No one goes the second day. But he was like, tomorrow we'll do it again. We're gonna have the Purim again, because the first night was this big party. All these people were there. But he was like, come back tomorrow. I came back. It was basically just me and him, and he just busted out the Jameson, and we just drank and sang Jewish songs and did Purim stuff, because that's what you're supposed to do on Purim. Is you're supposed to get shit faced.
Wow.
It's a mitzvah to get shit faced.
Now, the first time I met Sohan, he was in the tasting room at the Fang and Feather Crowded Barrel, and he was doing some selfies, talking in Chinese in an Irish accent.
Yes.
I've heard about this.
Yeah.
Do I need to get you drunker for you to do it? Because I mean,
I think I'm about drunk enough.
if today's supposed to get you drunk, I'm like, I came prepared.
A wee bit of Irish whiskey is enough to get it flowing, you know.
Now
但是如果我要用中文用我的爱尔兰的口音，就是这样的。但是你们听不懂我现在说的，我不知道他要不要做字幕，但是有一点麻烦。我觉得你不会要，但是这是我的爱尔兰的口音，讲中文的，很多中国人可以听得懂我现在说的。他们没什么问题，他们听得懂我的说的，他们不说你是哪里的人，他们只听很清楚我说的，很奇怪的。
Now, if we have any Chinese people, Chinese-speaking Irish people, let us know in the comments how well he does.
Yeah. 我的名字叫 Shameless or Shameless 。我的爸爸是中国人，但是我妈妈是从 County Cork 来的。Yeah, it's thank you for giving me the opportunity to do this. I'm sorry to anyone who I've offended, but I really do love Irish people and Irish culture. And if there's 3 things Irish people love, it's whiskey and tea and defending their national sovereignty from the British. Cheers.
Now, I think you have another Irish whiskey, and there is a bar coming to town on 6th Street that is an Irish whiskey bar out of New York called The Dead Rabbit. And
So this one, and this will segue into my next question, but I'll tell this. So with me getting into Teeling, I had learned a lot about. Do you want to try any of the whiskeys since you're just grabbing? Oh, gotcha.
Since you're just gonna break the fourth wall anyway, might as well get some whiskey.
Is anybody opposed to me breaking the fourth wall? Great. We're going to continue on. So the next question that I'm going to ask you, and we don't have to get into it now, we can get into it later, but once you get into the community, and I'm going to need glasses. Oh, look, there's more glasses. Richard's so smart. Once you've gotten into the tea community and you became your resident tea nerd for all of your friends and doing all that kind of stuff, have you run across, or what did you find out about that is hard to find? So, Richard and I have a mutual friend. Her name is Brittany, and she was the manager. Sorry.
I'm not trying to drink too much.
She is the manager.
She was the manager at the Dripping Spring Specs where I live, and she is now a manager of Specs on the north side. And she knew I was into Irish whiskeys, and I was in there one day, and I was buying a couple of different Irishes to restock the cabinet. She's like, "Hey, I got something that you might be interested in." I said, "Okay, what's that?" She's like, "I have a bottle of Dead Rabbit." I'm like, "Really? Like the Irish bar in New York?" She's like, "Absolutely." So she got it, and she brought it to me. I bought it, obviously. And this is what it is. This will not pair well with that.
Okay,
just going to throw that out there right now. It
might.
No, this is heavy barrel, so it's going to be different. But this is one of those that just stands so remarkably well on its own. So now as you're the shame of shameless, once you have a drink of that, again, what memory does that bring forward for you? Because it's a whole different animal now.
So I mean, I'm already having to kind of clear my mind and not think about Gangs of New York, because that's obviously the Dead Rabbit reference.
Exactly.
Goes back to the Gangs of New York, which is a freaking amazing film. If anyone who's watching this hasn't seen it, stop the episode, go watch it, and come back and watch the rest of the episode after having seen that movie. Fucking amazing movie. And so, I'm trying to. What was that?
It does pair well. I was incorrect.
Oh, okay, cool.
It does work though.
On the fragrance, it definitely feels more round. If that's like round like a ball, and kind of springy, bouncy. That might be a rabbit. Getting in my head with the rabbit. And then let's see. Ooh, that's nice. It's really nice. I do love Irish whiskey. I really do love Irish whiskey.
It's my favorite.
Yeah. It's definitely way up there for me. And it's just clean. It's real clean. Maybe that's that New York City water that,
I don't know if anyone's ever described that as clean. But
well, they say that's why the bagels are good and that's why the pizza's good, is because that New York City water comes from the Catskills.
As opposed to the Hudson River.
As opposed to the Hudson River, yeah. So, maybe it's that famous New York City municipal water, or I don't know, but it's got this clean and it feels kind of relaxed. It makes me feel like relaxed and kind of like I'm sitting at like a coffee shop or a bar and it's raining outside and I'm just sitting by the window and the condensation's on the window. I can feel the cold, radiating off the window. And I'm just sitting there drinking this whiskey or drinking a coffee, and it's kind of cold inside, but I'm looking out at the rain, maybe on the second floor. Rain's on the window pane, condensation's on the window pane. It's kind of gray outside.
I just walked into a candy shop.
Oh.
Yeah, this is like Laffy Taffy. This is like all of the different flavors of the bubble gums and the candies and to me, this is walking into a candy shop.
Those Canadian candy shops must be much better than ours. They don't have all the food dyes, This is much more wholesome than a candy shop for me.
We'll do a north end of Houston reference.
All right, here we go. Purple Drank, right?
No. So Woodlands area up north, where they still have, back in the 90s, where they still had all the honeysuckle bushes and everything else that would be blooming kind of early in spring, going to like the Woodlands Mall area in the spring, early, get there like 9 o'clock in the morning, and they're still doing there all the big skater parks that they had out there. People would skate around on like a Monday or Tuesday. Honeysuckles are out. The dew is there because, Houston, humidity is a thing. But just like you said, the coolness, and that's what it reminds me of, is like whenever you drink this, it's a whiskey that actually has like a naturally cooling effect.
Yeah.
Light sweetness, not any, I don't get candy shop because to me it's not that sweet, but it's definitely cool. But there is an inherent sweetness to it.
Right. Canadian candy shop, basically just maple.
That's
It's
fair.
basically just a bunch of maple syrup in different shapes.
That's true.
Now, Irish whiskey tends to be malted barley, unmalted barley. There were tax laws that ended up taxing malted barley, and so they ended up throwing in unmalted barley so that they could get away with.
to hell with the government.
That's like the whole story of whiskey is just
Exactly.
like this kind of arms race with the government, basically.
Except for bottled and bond, where the government actually got involved with that, and that's where it came from.
All right.
It's the only time that it did. A funny story about Irish whiskeys, because much like you, I am an Irish whiskey person. I'd gotten Richard to do a tasting for me, and my kids were out of town, so my wife and I were going to go do it. And apparently, it had been in talk for a couple days about me coming in and doing this tasting, and he was going to do all the really cool Irishes, and I was going to enjoy it. And we're at the tasting room beforehand with the Fang and Feather, and everybody's talking about all the Irishes I'm going to have. I'm like, yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. We're going to have a great time. We go to the vault. Richard stands in front of the Irish walls, and looks at me. He's like, okay, we're going to. I'm like, not Irishes. My wife, I want you to talk to her, because a couple days prior to that, she had said that she wanted to experience whiskeys in the way that I did, and I was okay with tastings, but I hadn't been able to figure out something that she would like. And I looked at Richard. I'm like, I need you to help me figure out what she likes. And the look on his face of shit. He immediately started looking around and went, all right, here we go. And completely derailed him.
Yeah. And
he did beautifully with it. Like, we had some amazing stuff.
Oh, I've done the tour with Richard. He's the Willy Wonka of whiskey, really. You know.
And the thing is actually the connection with people that we keep talking about, trying to find out what the person in front of you is after, as opposed to what you want to show them.
Yes.
And this is the ability of being a good host. This is something that Sohan does so extremely well, is being a great host. But there's a certain amount of knowledge that you have, but there also is a certain amount of, oh, this went in an entirely different direction, and how do we reconcile that? How do we move past that? And how do we find this new direction and end up where we have a satisfying conclusion? This is the art of having a speech, and having a prepared speech, and standing in front of a group of people and knowing your subject well enough that when something comes along and somebody says, well, what about this? It's like, well, if that's the direction that you want to take, we can take that direction, and we can pivot, and we can have a different conversation. Right. And that's what makes having this type of experience a better experience. It was so much fun creating this and finding the relationship between. Sohan came to the tasting room, and we were doing this whiskey pairing with tea a long time ago.
Really good pairing.
Yeah.
I'm surprised. I was like, whatever. No way. This tea's gonna stand up to any whiskey. But
well, I was worried about it because and sorry to interrupt, Richard.
That's all right.
But what I was thinking about, like the barrel, because this has such a barrel note, but it's bringing out like almost like it's super. It's dropping out all the hay flavors and all the vegetal notes, but it's bringing out like all of the citrus flavor that comes out of the tea. And it's like a whole different thing.
Yeah, it's a whole different thing. It is really good. I'm really surprised because Silver Needle is not the tea I would pair with any whiskey ever because it's so light. But there you go. Just goes to show.
Sorry, tasting room and getting together, having the stories and being able to talk, and y'all were doing the.
Yeah, so Sohan and I were actually trying to figure out a way to do a proposal for the Whiskey Tribe, creating an episode. And I brought the aged gin and the aged vodka to Sohan, left it behind, let them experiment with a number of different teas. And then Sohan and Corey and I don't know who else part of your crew showed up in the tasting room. It's like, we're doing a tasting right here, right now with all of these. And it was just so much fun.
Yeah.
And it was a great experience. So tying all of these different experiences together to create this show was actually, that was the impetus was, you know what, we can sit down and have a conversation over tea and bring in interesting people who are also sharing interesting stories about whiskey and their experiences.
I love it. And
Yeah.
I can't get over like the almost lemon drop flavor this tea has
Yeah.
after the whiskey.
Yeah.
It is wild. Have you, Corey, been able to do this pairing yet?
Not yet.
You've got
Oh,
to
yeah.
try it.
I will.
Like,
I will in just
I got you a juicy steep in here, ready to
Which-
rock.
Which tea again is this on?
Silver Needle, charcoal roasted Silver Needle, which I chose because it was the first tea that I drank when I was introduced to the art of Gong Fu Cha, and that made it this real thing for me, this lifestyle thing, as opposed to just like
you want the tea or the whiskey in there?
whiskey. And then here I got you with tea. Corey. He's got a cup. He's got a cup.
He's
I
got
do.
cups,
I do. I got
all kinds of cups.
Thank you.
We're doing all the barware.
And in behind the
I'm
scenes, we
giving me a
got
little bit
Corey.
more.
Corey is the mastermind. He puts this whole thing together so that we can sit and talk and not have to worry about all of the
it's great.
production
He's
stuff.
live switching over there. He's doing all the stuff.
And it's, again, what I'm loving about this right now is it's just hanging out. It's being pleasantly surprised with something that none of us thought was going to work.
Yep.
They were all like, I'm doing this again because like the
Yeah.
flavors work so well. And it actually turns both of these into something different.
That's whenever you get a good, because we do an event called Tea and Chocolate here, where we pair teas and chocolates, and it's the same. The two become greater than the sum of their parts. There are notes that are neither in the whiskey nor the tea by themselves that come out when you combine them, and that's always this really, and it doesn't always happen.
No.
It doesn't always happen. Like I'd say that second pairing with your Fitzgerald with the gukbo, the chrysanthemum chupor, didn't really do anything. The first one was good. The
Right.
second one, even though it was also a weeded bourbon, somehow it just missed the mark. But this one pairs easily as good as the last
Yeah.
one. Easily as good in a completely different way.
And
Man, that tea and chocolate pairing is one of the best events y'all do.
Yeah,
It
well,
is
because you get lit too.
amazing.
People don't understand. People don't understand what happens when you combine tea and chocolate.
Yeah. And then the last chocolate, or at least the last one I did, was the lamb chocolate.
Oh yeah, I freaking love that lamb. They got a lamb flavored chocolate. It's
Nice.
So good. It's a
Lamb
local,
is delicious.
local chocolate company. There's no actual lamb in it, but it's the spices that go into the Chinese lamb skewer, which is this. It's a Chinese chocolate company. It's like a classic, like it's barbecue. It's what they call Chinese. It's not barbecue where it's smoked, but it is what they call it Chinese barbecue, and it's you're cooking over charcoal on a grill, and you got all these skewers, and it's kind of like kebabs, but it's like every fucking thing you can imagine.
what
It's
is it
so
called?
good.
What's the actual name for it? I've seen it. I've had it before. I actually had it in Chinatown about a year ago.
In
There's a place-
Chengdu, where I'm from, they call it Shao Kao.
Yeah.
Shao Kao.
And the one that I had down in Houston, somebody had taken and they made this custom grill that was on a bar, and it was all inside with giant hoods going over
Wow.
it. But it was about probably 6 or 8 inches wide.
Yeah,
It was
yeah.
super thick metal. It was angled, and they had the coconut pressed like charcoal logs. They lit those, and the entire thing was filled with it. And they're putting the skewers on, turning it. You kind of order. They're putting everything out in front of your
Yes,
plate.
that's
It
what
is
I'm talking
so simple. It is so clean. It's so beautifully and elegantly done that. Oh my God! It was amazing.
Yeah. That was when I lived in Chengdu, which is where I lived in China. That was every freaking night. I went out to the bar and I was like wobbling home. That was the shit. I would stop and I would get a couple of beers and like $15, which is a lot, way more than I need, worth of freaking Shao Kao, and I just sit there chewing it off those sticks, drinking those warm beers. It was.
And it's beautiful. It's so clean. It's not overly flavored. You get to enjoy the meat. The very unique smoke that comes off of like the coconut charcoal. It's phenomenal.
Yeah.
Absolutely phenomenal.
So if you like what we're doing here, you can actually rent us, and we can come to your corporate event. We can do tastings. You can go to the Whiskey Vault. I can take you up there as well. 1 to 6 people is about the amount of people that you're going to want. It's a smaller room. But richardamiro.com is going to get you that. West China Tea, or together we could do.
Because we do that too. We go serve tea at corporate events, HR, like team building exercise. People love it. We'll go serve tea. They come here, whatever. But yeah, that'd be crazy. Do a pairing like that. People
that would be
love
fantastic.
That. That would be amazing. Yeah.
Yeah. So
I'm here for it.
richardamiro.com and West China Tea. And what's the website?
WestChinaTea.com.
There you go.
West China Tea on Instagram. West China Tea on TikTok.
Or
Tea House Ghost on YouTube.
or whiskeyprovisioner.com and
Whiskey
all of the
Provisioner,
YouTubes on
yeah.
there. So follow us, like us, share it.
Smash that subscribe button.
Thank you, Ryan. We've got another episode coming up, so let's settle this down and move on to the next thing.
All right.
Thank you for the time and cheers.
Cheers.
Been great.
Cheers.